Yeah, and so Joss was there a lot, and he'd go, oh, like that. You could tell that after a while he knew who I was.
Mm-hmm.
They always knew. We had memos and okays and approvals, and he'd see me, and I was trying very hard the first time I was up there to interview him. I went up a number of times, but the first time I didn't know if I'd be back, so I wanted to interview him. So we'd sit down, we'd start to get interviewed, and he'd be called away. It happened over and over and over, and I'm a communications major. I know about film and TV production, but it really never hit me before how busy a showrunner and a director are.
Mm-hmm.
He was just constantly on call and always very affable, friendly, funny.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people go, Joss, which blanket do you want? Joss, what color should this be? And he'd always have an answer because he has to have an
Yes.
answer. He's like Jean-Luc Picard of Buffy. And he'd go, okay, where were we? Okay, where were we? And just couldn't be nicer. And the first time I interviewed him, they were going to show Spike's new crypt where he was moving, where he watched Passions, and we were sitting on top of his sarcophagus thing in the dark, and I was taping him with an old tape recorder, and the battery ran down, and the tape started spewing out. But we were in the dark, so we didn't know.
Oh.
So they called him out, and it was pitch dark, and we went outside. It was so bright, and I looked down and I saw my tape. I said a very bad word. And he smiled and he fixed it for me. I said, please recreate what you just said. And he tried. He did his best, but he was so fun. He just cracked up because I went, and so professional. But I asked him in that interview, I said, do you think you're an auteur? And he started laughing. Oh, me? And of course, I was just like, I had to keep my fangirl down because I was like, oh, you're so wonderful. But I was presenting him in his own book, and I had to be very professional. But he let me go to everything. I went to spotting sessions. I went to all kinds of production things. I went to Todd A.O. to watch them do the post-production sound and lay in all those soundtracks, and I got to go everywhere. And after that, I would see him places, and I go, hi, Joss, my name is Nancy Holder, and I interviewed you. And he'd go, I know who you are. And he would be so kind. And everywhere I've gone, people who he could help, he has helped. He's just a really nice person. So yes, I got to meet him, what I wish I'd told him in those times when I kind of had his ear was how much I admired his writing. He's a wonderful showrunner. His show was awesome. Angel was amazing. I love Firefly. But his actual scripts, when you read his scripts, they're so good. And he was funny. He'd say, like, Xander walks past the soldier. The soldier says nothing because he is an extra. And it was just funny. Or like, it's the university grounds. Okay, it's our same damn alley. And it's like, and then break as many things as you can for $1.98. And they'd just be so funny. And I just sit there. I just loved reading it. So I wish I could tell him that. So, Joss, I love your writing.
Well, I'm sure when he watches this on the SlayerLit website.
Oh, I hope he does watch it. You're fabulous.
You ever consider pitching a script to the show?
Chris and I did fax 3 pitches. I don't know if anybody ever read them. The thing about Hollywood is people in Hollywood are very union-oriented. They think in the terms of their union, which I approve of, by the way. And so I think when you're in a TV show situation, we were perceived of as print authors. We weren't perceived of as... We were welcome, but we weren't part of the gang. And so we were there long enough where everybody knew who we were, but we weren't there long enough to wear our welcome or have anything expected of us. Like nobody would say, would you go get that X? Because that's not our job.
Yes.
And I think we could have tried to pitch a little harder, but we were so busy with what we were doing, and it seemed like kind of a leap in to try to do that. Marty Noxon was a secretary in Hollywood for 7 years, and the whole time she was a secretary, she was pitching and writing scripts. 7 years. And she started working on Buffy as a writer, and that was her first, as I recall, her first writing gig. And so, to me, it felt like there was kind of a step function of how to get into pitching. And, we thought of cool ideas, but then we just wrote the books for them. So,
well, it's nice to have that outlet for your ideas, isn't it?
Yeah.
And do you have a certain possessiveness of the characters? So when you watch the show or you read someone else's book or the comic, do you think, that's not exactly how I would have done it?
The one thing that was funny was we wrote Buffy for so long, or I wrote Buffy for so long, that I went through a number of editors. and some of the editors came late to the gig. And at the beginning, Chris and I established a few things, like we have the things called the ghost roads, which we wrote about. I had a new editor, and he said, "What are these ghost road things?" I thought, okay, I can't assume that everybody's following me as closely as I'm following me. So that I had to let go of that, and it made me a little sad. And I thought I have to go straight back to the show. I can't assume anybody's ever read anything I've written.
Yeah.
And I have new editors now at Simon & Schuster who didn't realize that I'd been on set. Or one editor didn't even know I'd written Buffy books, and her brother is a Buffy fan. And she said he's going to die when he figures out, when I tell him, that I'm your editor, because she didn't know. And it used to be that everybody knew. I mean, Buffy was on.
Right.
So, and I wrote for Buffy for 10 years. I'm still writing, because I'm writing my essays and stuff. But, so that kind of, and that's what I write about in Weedonistas. And there's a new book called Tie-In, which is written by members of the International Association of Media Tie-In Writers. And I write about my Highlander gig and then my Buffy gig and how I changed. And one of the things that's important as a person who writes material based on somebody else's creation, you have to serve their creation. It's their thing. So I can't write more than is there. I write more of what is there. And that's my job. I think of myself as an interpreter rather than as a creator. As an author, it's an egotistical down. You have to put your ego down and do the best you can for the show.
Right.
So in that way, I'm not so possessive.
Well, before we wrap up, let me ask you: have you been reading the Buffy and Angel comics?
Not lately.
No?
I was, and I'm not. I didn't stop because I didn't like them. I just ran out of time. But I love it when anything Buffy is up or out. And after the Buffy reissues started coming out, I wrote my Buffy editor at Simon & Schuster. I said, clearly the time has come for new Buffy novels.
Yes.
And she said, well, you'll be the first to know if we do that. Ha ha. And I'm like, come on, just do it. So.
Were you aware they were coming out with those? I contacted one of the other authors when they first announced them and said congratulations, and they had no idea their work was being reprinted.
Oh, well, I got actually sent the covers, and they said, look, this beautiful thing's coming out. And naively, I wrote back, I said, I don't mean to offend you, but are you aware that the font is a little different? Duh. Yeah, they kind of knew. But she said, we're trying to appeal to people who may have never watched the show and sort of reboot and get people who like vampire fiction to read Buffy. And I had taught a class at UC San Diego on Buffy.
Yes.
And only 2 people in the entire class had watched Buffy when it was on. Everybody else had come to it through the DVDs and like downloading episodes.
Wow.
They had never watched it when it was on. They didn't pay attention. So
that shows you the strength of the character that it lives on that
Buffy
way.
will never die. So
I think the only drawback to the new book series, the reprints, is that I think the packaging is terrific. It's going to attract people's eyes. I rarely see them in bookstores. I don't think they're getting them out.
Oh, no, see, I've been signing for Crusade, and everywhere I go, Buffy 2 is on an end cap.
Now, that's excellent. I've yet to see that anywhere in Chicago or other cities I've been to. I've seen it a couple of times on the shelves, but not faced, and certainly not an end cap, but that's great.
I've found it in Paranormal Romances, and I have found it end capped. And in fact, I'm laughing because sometimes its positioning is better than Crusade. Like, okay, well, one of my books is out there, but it's interesting. Maybe it's because it's California.
That could be. Or a flyover state.
No.
Well, Nancy, thank you so much for doing this. It's been a thrill to finally talk with you. And I could talk with you for hours more.
Me too.
But you have to get to your conference.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll speak to you again sometime.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who's loved Buffy and kept Buffy going, and Angel and Firefly. And I'm so glad Nathan Fillion's got a show, and everybody else. So I also want to make a pitch that these actors continue to be the wonderful people they are. At Comic-Con every year, their brown coats have a charity, and it's always a charity picked by one of the authors, and the actors, and the actors come by and sign things and see how everybody's doing, and they're just great people. Yeah. Joss picked good people.
Yes, he did.
So thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to cry.